Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm pleased to have the leaders of our initiative on Catholic social thought and public life here to speak with us. I'm joined by John Carr, the initiative's founder and director, and Kim Daniels, the initiative's associate director. And John and Kim, I'm grateful to both of you for being here today and for your terrific leadership of our initiative on Catholic social thought and public life. So let's get started. John, you founded the initiative in 2013, and Kim, you've been a vital part of its development over these past few years. John, could you talk about why the initiative was formed 7 years ago, and maybe you could both share how you think it's evolved over that time?
Well, thanks for having us, President Joya. As I see you, I see a couch behind you. And I remember sitting on that couch about 8 years ago. And I came to you, I had been at the Bishops' Conference for 20 some years. And I came to you with this idea that we ought to get lay people, young people, to share Catholic social teaching more deeply and broadly. We ought to build a place for civil dialogue in Washington with so much division. And then we ought to reach out to young leaders and Latino leaders and bring together leaders from across the country to Georgetown to look at the connections between faith and public life through the lens of Catholic social teaching. So you took a chance on what we thought was a promising idea. And you know what? It's been terrific. We've done more than 100 different gatherings. We've had more than 130,000 people. There's a hunger for the moral vocabulary of Catholic social thought, human dignity, solidarity, care for creation. And at this time of intense polarization, there is also a hunger for principled dialogue across racial, ethnic, political lines. We have done almost all of our work in person because building bridges is a part of it. We spend more on food and drink than we do on microphones and speakers because we want people from different backgrounds to get together. But since we were last in Healy Hall with you, we've done, 15 online dialogues, 50,000 people, and it has enabled us to reach much further. I remember we were doing a session with Archbishop Gregory right after George Floyd was murdered. And we had thousands of people online. And I got an email in the middle of it from Cardinal Turkson, who is one of Pope Francis' key advisors. And he says, can I get in on the conversation? And we found a way to do that. But thanks for taking a chance on this idea. We think we're a small but important demonstration of Georgetown's Catholic identity and Jesuit mission in action. And we think people are finding it to be a place for dialogue and for coming together.
Thank you, John.
And maybe I'll just jump in and say why I came to the initiative. Well, it's because John Carr picked up the phone and gave me a call. And it was for the very first gathering that the initiative had. I was on the panel. And John and I come from different parts of the Catholic family. And that's precisely why he reached out, because he knew that we shared so much in common. So I was part of that first dialogue, which was just wonderful. It was a full Gaston Hall. It was David Brooks and it was Mark Shields and it was a leading Catholic laywoman, Alexia Kelly, and myself. And to look out at that audience and to have this robust and intellectual and engaged discussion with Georgetown students and the Washington community, I just thought, what a place to be, what a conversation. And I eventually got myself here, which is wonderful, helped out with the polarization convening that we had a few years ago that talked about how do we resist polarization across political and religious and ideological lines, both in our church and in the country. And it was a great experience. And that's one of the ways that we've evolved. We've really focused on that issue in particular. Another way is that we've really focused on reaching out to young leaders and really grown our Salt and Light program for young leaders and our Latino leaders gatherings, both of which reach out to young people to say, here's how your faith, here's how Catholic social thought can be a part of your personal and professional life. See them as an asset. We bring them together to build relationships and friendships and to meet other leaders in Washington. We also teach a seminar here with students. Georgetown students are the best. And most of all, we've just learned that Georgetown is the right place for this conversation. We're right at the center of Washington, our national and global policy issues. We're right at the center of so many issues related to our church. So I've loved being here, and the initiative's been a wonderful place for us all to have these wonderful conversations.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, the initiative on Catholic social thought and public life has done a terrific job helping our community understand and engage deeply with the church's teachings, and specifically with Pope Francis's leadership. And last month, Pope Francis released his new encyclical, Fratelli Tutti. And Kim, for those who might not be familiar with the encyclical, could you share a bit about what it says and why it's so important in this current moment?
Sure, I'd love to. It's a remarkable document. And Pope Francis has been at the center of our work here at the initiative. That first dialogue I was talking about was on Pope Francis. And Vatican allies and leaders have joined us here from, as John mentioned, Cardinal Turkson, Archbishop Charles Scicluna, and Cardinal Michael Czerny, among many others, who have joined us to help talk about the mission of Francis. Fratelli Tutti is this very recent encyclical that Francis released just on October 3rd. So he signed it on October 3rd in Assisi. He released it on October 4th, the feast of St. Francis. And then on October 5th, the very next day, we had a dialogue on it again with Cardinal Michael Czerny, who was very involved in these issues at the Vatican, and with a Franciscan sister, Sister Nancy Schreck, a young immigrant advocate, Edith Avila Olea, and Claire Giangrave, who was a really, really interesting and thoughtful Vatican reporter. And Fratelli Tutti, what we talked about there was its mission, which is how do we engage in public life in this time of crisis, in this time of polarization, and in this time of pandemic? And when you think about Pope Francis in the spring, right, that Urbi et Orbi address where he stood alone in St. Peter's Square, it was raining, it was dark, and he said, "Be not afraid." And then we get to October with Fratelli Tutti, and he says, here's what we need to do in this particular moment. We need to look through the parable of the Good Samaritan. We need to ask who our neighbor is, and we need to have an expansive answer to that question. We need to stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters, and we need to recognize that we are all one human family together. It's an important time for this moment, for this conversation to be had, of course, and he reached out to other faith communities as well, in particular Muslim leaders, with the Abu Dhabi Statement, the document on human fraternity. So it's a really important document, and there's so much to mine from it.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, as leaders of the initiative, both of you have done so much work to address polarization in our religious communities as well as our political communities. What have you learned about fostering dialogue across differences? What conversations or events do you think have been a particular success in this regard? And first, John, and then Kim.
Well, first of all, take a look at where we are. We've just come through a very angry, divided election. Can't even agree on who won. Our church is wounded. Those divisions in political life are expressed in our faith community. The first thing I would say is building bridges is really hard in these times. We're stuck in our bubbles. And so we have deliberately tried to break those bubbles and clear those walls. So one of the things we do is we always have a range of voices. Some of them are big shots. We've had the President of the United States come to Georgetown to be a part of a panel on poverty. And some are everyday folks. We had a woman who owns a family restaurant in Silver Spring talking about COVID-19. And to be honest, you put together leaders of religion and politics, you end up with people who are very divided and who sort of look and talk the same. And so we deliberately try to break those bubbles. We have a secular foundation, you know them, Jack, the Democracy Fund. They're not much interested in Catholic social teaching. They're not interested much in Pope Francis, but they say that Catholic social teaching and Pope Francis and Georgetown provides a place and a way to bring people together who wouldn't otherwise be together. So 10 days before the election, we had a Catholic who supports Trump and a Catholic who supports Biden talking. And the headline was, dialogue, don't demonize. That upset some people. We did a big convening of 100 leaders, from the nuns on the bus to the March for Life. We had Robbie George, we had E.J. Dion, major academics, but the most impressive people were the young leaders who frankly have less baggage than I do, who aren't interested in fighting the last wars. And seeing Pope Francis, seeing Catholic social teaching, sort of an alternative to the battles that consume us. I just got off a Zoom call with my class on Catholic social thought, Pope Francis and public life. And every class, I tell them, the first question on the exam is going to be, what is the most important word in Catholic social teaching? And the word is and, A-N-D. So human life and dignity go together. Our politics tears them apart. Solidarity and subsidiarity. We belong together. How do we divide up the work? We pull them together. Human rights, responsibilities, care for creation, and care for the poor. So Georgetown provides a place, and the initiative provides a way to bring people together that wouldn't otherwise be together. Kim talked about us coming from different sides of the family. There's not enough of that. And frankly, with your leadership and our continuing efforts, we're a unique place where people come together, put down some of their weapons, and try and see if we couldn't agree to accomplish something for the common good. Our first session before the inauguration is going to be, what are faithful priorities that could bring people together? Maybe we could decide to end hunger or deal with poverty together.
Thank you, Jeff.
Just so you asked about lessons that we've learned from these conversations. And I just want to give you a couple very quickly. The first, as we've already talked about, is that Catholic social thought, Catholic social teaching principles really do provide a moral vocabulary and architecture for thinking about divisive public issues in a way that can bring people together by focusing on the equal dignity of all, by focusing on solidarity with the poor and vulnerable, and how we can work together for the common good. The second I'll highlight is that dialogue is crucial, that dialogue is itself an act of resistance to polarization. And it's always principled dialogue. We're not looking for a mushy middle or a least common denominator, but we are looking for a way to engage with people who disagree, to complexify the way we think about these issues, and hopefully come to some kind of path forward. Finally, I just want to highlight that it's service where we can come together against polarization. At this polarization convening that John talked about, Sister Norma Pimentel, who is at Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley, was here. And we were having these conversations about polarization, and they tended to be academic. And she stopped us short. And she came up to her panel and she said, there is no polarization at the border. When you're serving people in need, there is no polarization. I work with the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol works with me. I work to help people who are in need. So those are some of the lessons we've learned, and there are many more.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Now, you've hosted several events this summer and fall that invited members of our community to engage deeply with the intersection of Catholic faith and racial justice. What do you think is next for the Catholic community in addressing issues of racial inequality, both within our religious communities, but also in our wider national and global communities?
Well, nothing will test us more. I remember Dahlgren Chapel, you let us off. It was jammed with students and others. And we had John Lewis, we had Archbishop Gregory, who then was from Atlanta. He's in Rome now to be the first African-American cardinal, our cardinal in Washington, Jim Wallace and Marcia Chatelain from Georgetown, to talk about our responsibilities. And what I've learned is, first of all, you listen and learn. And so we provided opportunities to do that. You led off a session on Georgetown's response to slavery. The week after George Floyd was killed before our eyes, we had Archbishop Gregory and 20,000 people talking in 4 African-American Catholic lay leaders. And they said, listen and learn, but they also said, examine your conscience, personally, institutionally, structurally. And, you know, I just, speaking personally, I grew up a mile from where George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis. My life was nothing like his. I just didn't know what he was up against. And I'm so proud to be a part of Georgetown, oldest Catholic Jesuit university. And you took leadership with students, with a working group to face up to our history of participation in slavery, benefiting from slavery. And that example of looking at the realities, assessing your own responsibility, and then figuring out what we need to do. So I think there is a reckoning for us, for our church, for our university, and this will be a persistent, consistent theme for the initiative. And just as you have led the university in facing up to their responsibility, our responsibilities, I hope our Cardinal Archbishop Gregory will help the church face up to our responsibility.
The initiative has also provided thoughtful and vital leadership around the response to clerical sexual abuse, the clerical sexual abuse crisis, providing space for public dialogue that listens to survivors and engages lay leadership and how they can take action. Can you speak a bit more about your approach to this important work? Perhaps first John and then Kim.
Thanks for calling on me first, because this for me is personal, professional, institutional. This is not something the initiative ordinarily would focus on. We're focused outward, not inward. But you encouraged us, and just what we were up against required us to take a look at how this was damaging the dignity of people in the church and undermining our witness in public life. And we did what, I think 9 or 10 gatherings. Kim will talk about it. But for me, there was a reckoning. I had worked for the Catholic bishops. I had worked with Cardinal Law. I worked closely with Cardinal McCarrick. There were not enough parents in the room when these decisions were made. Survivors were not listened to. Accountability wasn't assured. They were isolated, these leaders. There are 2 crises. What happened to victims, but also the leaders that failed. And I found myself talking to journalists. One of the things Kim and I do is spend a lot of time talking to journalists, some on the record, some off, helping them understand what we're up to and what Pope Francis is doing. And one of the times I heard myself saying, you know what's a big part of this is silence. And then I got off the phone and I thought, I've been silent about some of this. And for the first time in Gaston Hall, I talked about my own experience in a high school seminary and after. And did an interview for Georgetown magazine and an article for America. And I think what we've learned is put survivors first, deal with clericalism. Kim has been a leader in our church and worked with the Vatican on this, but we stepped up and did things for young people. Kim, why don't you talk about what we've done?
Sure. We've had, as John mentioned, we've had 10 different gatherings on this. One of the principles that we always follow is to always have a victim survivor on our different panels and be sure they're in the conversation, because those voices are so important to prioritize. We've talked with young people. That was our first gathering. And it was so, I don't know if you remember how 2018 went, right? This summer, we had the revelations about former Cardinal McCarrick. We had the Pennsylvania grand jury report. And then we got back onto campus, and the very first gathering we had was with young people. And the raw emotion of this was so strong and just affected me and really cemented in John and my mind that this was something we needed to continue with and lean into. So 10 different gatherings over the year. We had a convening on lay leadership in the church. We co-sponsored another gathering with the law school where we really thought through the thorny issues around clergy sexual abuse. I have an advisory role at the Vatican, and so I was fortunate to be able to be at the February 2019 Global Summit on Clergy Sexual Abuse in Rome, where again, if I would take one thing away from that, it was the importance of victims' voices, the importance of having women in the conversation, frankly, because at that summit, women were bringing the conversation down to earth in a way that had not been heard before. And that helped, I think, result in the conversion of some hearts that Pope Francis is always talking about. What our goals always are to move forward with responsibility, accountability, and transparency in the church, to highlight the role of victims and to help resist the culture of clericalism that too often hid this scourge of our church. And I'm grateful we were able to do that, and we continue to try to work on this serious, grave issue.
I can't thank you both enough for all of your contributions to our community and to engaging the most important questions of our moment right now. In closing, is there a message you'd like to share with our community? Perhaps I'll first go to John and then to Kim.
Well, I was trying to think, what do you do after a campaign? I mean, 2020, it's just been awful. COVID, my 6-year-old grandson got the test back positive this morning. I mean, it's just overwhelming, and so many have lost so much. The racial reckoning in our society, the bitterness of politics, the economic collapse, the work you and your colleagues are doing to try and keep us safe and solvent and true to our mission. So what do you do? And it occurred to me that what you might do is try and promote civil, thoughtful, principled dialogue across these bitter lines. You might offer the principles of Catholic social thought as an alternative to this mess. And you might help form a new generation of leaders, especially in the Latino community. And so I thought maybe what we do is what the initiative started to do 8 years ago, and we try and go broader and deeper and reach more people. So 8 years ago in that room, you said, let's try this. And we're still here, we're still moving forward, and you're very grateful that you welcomed me and the initiative, and that we're the right place at the right time to be a part of Georgetown's mission.
Thank you, John. And Kim?
Sure. I would just say that one of the most countercultural things that the Catholic Church teaches is that politics can be a good thing, that public engagement is part of our mission and our responsibility. Catholic engagement in public life is robust, and it's complicated, and it's important. It's local, it's national, it's global, it's institutions, it's popular movements, it's families, it's communities. And it's 1.4 billion diverse and lively individual persons who are united by a shared faith that does justice. I'm so grateful to be part of raising that up here at Georgetown. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity to talk today about our work, our shared work.
Well, thank you both. And I'm grateful to both of you for taking the time to talk with us today. And thank you for all that you do to bring our community together. And I look forward to being with all of you again soon. Take care of yourselves and take care of everyone around you. For every Hoya, everywhere.